Well, hello and welcome to a new video. This is just a quick video to demonstrate my latest street lighting acquisition. This is number 207. Yes, really, that's quite a lot of lanterns. But it is quite a special lantern in that it's an Alpha 1. It's very much an Alpha 1. It's a smashed Alpha 1, which is part of the course, unfortunately. But the main reason that I wanted to save this one is it's because of it's an Atlas Alpha 1, making it rather rare, even when the Thorn versions aren't exactly 10 a penny these days. Certainly the Atlas ones are extremely rare, and if you can find one at all, you're doing well. It's a shame it's in such terrible condition. Ordinarily I don't think I'd have bothered with a lantern in this state, but just with it being the Atlas version, the original type of Alpha 1, I thought, well, why not indeed? We'll give it a try. Could be a laugh, you know. So here it is. Yes, in all its glory, if you can call it that. Because the principle of the Alpha 1 was really that it was going to be a sealed lamp to reduce on cleaning and maintenance. Launched in 1955 to great acclaim, still made into the very early 1990s. So they did something right when they designed it back in the day. The design has changed quite little over those years overall. The Opticells pretty much stayed as it was, and the rear casting was also not terribly different throughout the period it was manufactured. This particular example came from Lisle Street in Loughborough, which I have photographed separately as a survivor from the past article. It was attached to a wall by this little bracket. Thankfully, despite being up for probably 50-60 years, the bolts came out as if they'd been fitted yesterday. And then it was just a case of rescuing all of this and making sure it didn't smash on the floor. Yes, I've seen Only Fools and Horses, and I know how things can end up on the floor quite easily when you're not paying attention. But luckily, all survived in as intact a condition as is reasonable to expect with all this lot. Sadly, the damage must have been relatively recent, because if you go on Google Street View in 2022, it's more or less still intact back in the day then. So obviously something's happened in the meantime that's led it to being rather smashed. Remarkably, however, the lamp survived intact, and sadly, while it doesn't work, I have tried, it is still maintaining a vacuum, as the barium getter is still silvery, although there's not a lot left of it now. It's a Philips lamp, although it carries Criselco branding, even though Criselco was part of Philips and had been since 1927 back in the day. It was made in August 1971, according to the date code, which just indicates how long the lantern has probably been out of action, given how long ago that was. Say this is 2025 now, 54 years ago. Even a very good SOX lamp isn't going to last that long. So yeah, it's had a bit of a life, this poor thing. But the main thing is it's saved now. As with the other Alpha ones, the sort of the later Thorn versions, there's an aluminium plug that goes into the Opticell. And ordinarily, when it's not smashed to pieces, this would then provide a sort of bung to seal the Opticell and thus prevent any ingress into the sealed area. Unlike later versions, this has a sort of breathing ventilation tube thing on there, which would allow air to flow within the lantern without causing condensation on the inside of the acrylic, which is something that I say wasn't continued on for later lanterns. The cable between this bit and that bit, in this case, is a rubber flex. This is very, very, very perished, and you can see why this lantern hasn't been used for many a year, because the wiring is effectively just dust in many places. Where the insulation is exposed, it's gone, there's nothing left of it, and it's all that's left is the internal wiring, the internal cores. Up and down on here on the casting there are hooks up and down because that would have held the Opticell in place. Later versions saw these included within the actual casting itself, whereas on these early versions the parts were separate and then were screwed into place, as proven by these little screw marks on the sides. Whereas the Thorn versions had a toggle mechanism that secured everything into place during normal operation. The Atlas versions, certainly the older ones, had a thumb screw that slid through this hole here, and then that instead held everything together during normal circumstances. But as I say, the Thorn versions changed that to a toggle. In the case of this one, the thumb screw was long gone, and in its place there was a bolt. Sadly, the bolt had just completely jammed. There was no turn on it at all, and in the end I just had to break the head off with a pair of Stilsons and shear it just to be able to separate the two parts and see exactly what lay within here. And the sheared remains of the bolt are just visible there, and that would have gone into there, and obviously it created a very secure, rigid lantern after all that then, but not in the case of this one. So as to say, yes, the similar mechanism for attaching the Opticell is thus: the bottom hooks go on to there, and then with a bit of effort the top ones should follow suit, although it is quite a fiddly design this time, and it takes a bit of jiggling around to get it to go in properly, which it's not going to do currently because it's on camera and it doesn't want to do it. But effectively it would engage in something akin to that, and then with this lantern you then fasten the thumb screw back up and away you go. Now of course, because this is a Thorn lantern from way back when, we need an Atlas lantern from way back when, there are mild steel grub screws here and underside, and they are all completely jammed, as you would imagine. But because this lantern is in such a state that it's in, I'm going to leave it on the bracket, probably leave it in this condition, because I don't think I'll ever find another Atlas branded Opticell, and the Thorn ones aren't quite as compatible. There's slight differences that don't make them immediately interchangeable, so I think I'll just leave this one as it is, just to show how remarkable it is that parts of it have still survived when the rest of it had trashed. The lantern was wired in the old mineral insulated copper clad cable known as pyro in the trade. It's a very sort of fire resistant cable. It's very long lasting. If it's done properly, it just goes on and on and on. There's not a lot to go wrong with it. And this went underneath the car park surface from where the lantern was removed and entered the building opposite as a slight diagonal. But hopefully and presumably it's long disconnected, but I did just check that as I was working just to make sure that nothing untoward happened. But yeah, say the lantern has been disused for so long that it's probably been disconnected for as long as well, really. But yes, that's just a brief overview of the Atlas Alpha 1. It's certainly seen better days, but the battle scars are part of its history, so in their own way they are quite interesting. Hope you've enjoyed this video, and thanks for watching.